Man, 2024 has not been the year of Scott Boras. It's pretty wild when you think about it, how that narrative could all change with the snap of a finger. If and when Juan Soto gets the $500 or $600 million contract everyone is expecting him to get. But until that happens, this year's featured Boras failed to get several of his clients the big contracts they were looking for, or at least most of them, having to settle for short-term deals they obviously wanted nothing to do with. Some have since decided to turn on him, and others have stuck by his side, but the combination of the lack of big contracts for his guys and some of them leaving, even publicly calling him out, it hasn't been a great run lately. But at the same time, I've said this before and I'll say it again, let's not act like these were all players who deserved big contracts and Boras was the sole reason it didn't happen. The risk was too high and it would have been very desperate for a team to give a player like Cody Bellinger or Jordan Montgomery long-term deals. Teams are smarter now, and it's not very hard to understand why there's only so many players you should trust with a big contract. And speaking of Jordan Montgomery, he's someone who not only dropped Boras soon after having to settle for a short-term Diamondbacks deal right before the season, but he's also gone on to make multiple enemies, publicly calling out Boras regarding his decision to leave his agency, while also having a terrible year on the mound in Arizona, which led to the team's owner publicly trashing Montgomery and blaming himself for pushing the front office to sign such a terrible contract. And Montgomery is still technically on the team, mind you. He has one more year as an option with the D-backs for $25 million, and considering he couldn't have been worse on the mound this year, I don't see him entering the free agent market. And here's the owner basically begging him to get the hell out. So Boras has been kind of the root of a lot of chaos this year, deserved or not, but he did kind of redeem himself when he got Matt Chapman a nice extension with the Giants. Chapman was another player who had to settle for less money and less years, but that actually ended up for the best in his situation because not only did he get the first third of the original 3-year, $54 million contract he signed before the season, but now gets the deal he was looking for all along on top of that, signing an extension worth over $150 million more dollars. So shout out to him for betting on himself and winning that bet, and Boras gets the W in that way. But skip ahead several weeks later, and Boras has lost another client, although this one is different. It's Nick Castellanos, someone who wasn't a free agent who had to settle for a short-term deal before the 2024 season, and that's because he had already signed a free agent contract 2 years earlier. The Phillies contract he's currently on is a 5-year deal worth $100 million with 2 years currently left. So if Nick doesn't become a free agent for another 2 years, why would he fire Boras as his agent? Your guess is as good as mine. His wife is actually the one who broke the news for whatever reason, commenting under a Phillies fan page on Twitter that was talking about which Phillies players are represented by Scott Boras, to which Jess Castellanos replied, "Not Nick," and apparently Nick will be representing himself from now on. Again, no idea why this is the case considering the circumstance he's in, still under contract with the Phillies for 2 more years, and if anything, he should be grateful for what Boras got him. $100 million? $20 million per year? He's had some nice moments as a Philly, has come up big in the postseason, and overall has had above average numbers in his 3 seasons there so far, but barely above average. He's not at all been the guy they signed from Cincinnati. Maybe he had a falling out with Boras, maybe he saw the way things went down with his other clients before the season, but then again, the timing just wouldn't make any sense. That all happened like 7 months ago, so why would he just now be worried about it? He's 2 years and $40 million away from free agency. Who knows? Maybe he just knows from his age and where he's at in his career he won't get anything close to what he's getting now, so he just wants to see what he can do for himself by representing himself, and it doesn't really have much to do with Boras himself. But either way, Boras loses another client, even though this situation is a bit more odd.
Pride myself and think of myself as a man of faith. As there's a drive in a deep left field by Castellanos, it will be a home run.